gabbing with Greenwood. Greenwood Gab. All right. How are you doing today, Natalie?
I'm great.
We're back.
We're back. Welcome back to Greenwood Gab.
And we have this amazing new podcasting equipment. Do we sound amazing?
Probably.
We sound amazing in my ears, so I'm going to say yes. Do we remember how to do this?
Not really. And only you have the headphones in, so I don't know how we sound.
We sound great.
If you say we sound amazing, I trust you.
So, it's been a while.
Been a while.
Yeah, in the immortal words of Stained, I can, our amazing new podcasting equipment, I have the ability to Bluetooth in with my phone. So I could potentially play you a little Stained. just a snippet. Don't want to get into copyright infringement.
I think it's more fun when you sing, like that one episode where you kept singing I Found Love, whatever the name of that song is, by Rihanna.
We found love in a hopeless place.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll it's been a while.
So it's been a while, and we haven't talked about Southside Reads in a long time.
In a hot minute. Because, we were planning to come back a little earlier than this, but our fancy new podcasting equipment took a while to get here. It took a while to be tagged up in the appropriate Longwood channels.
Mm-hmm.
I got COVID.
And then I got COVID.
Maybe I gave it to her. Who knows?
We don't know.
But now we're here. We're healthy. We've got fancy equipment. And we're ready to talk a little bit about the last, how many months did we determine it was? 10 months since we talked about Southside Reads.
So this will probably be a 2-part episode.
Probably.
So stay tuned.
So now, because of our fancy new podcasting equipment, I have buttons that can make sounds. I'm going to try to play a little transition music for us. So let's see what happens. All right. I think it happened.
Okay.
So if we can remember 10 months ago, that was December of 2022.
Can I start singing Back to December by Taylor Swift now?
If you'd like.
I'm good. But we're going back to December, where the theme was food.
Because what else are you thinking about in December but how much you're going to eat?
Yeah, exactly.
So what did you read for December?
So I love a variation on the theme. So I picked Bitter in the Mouth by Monique Truong. And the variation on the theme is that it's not necessarily about food, but it's about a woman with like synesthesia, where she can taste what words sound like or taste like. She can taste words. So every time she speaks in the dialogue of the book, like every word she says, then next to it will be like what it tastes like. So that was interesting. But really, it's not a story about food. It's just a typical story where she can just taste words.
Interesting. Well, I read the second book in the Tita Rosie's Kitchen mystery series. So kitchen, food, definitely. Yeah. And it's called Homicide and Halo Halo. For those of you who are not familiar with Filipino cuisine, halo halo is a Tagalog word for mixed. And basically, it's a cold dessert that's like shaved or crushed ice, evaporated milk or coconut milk, and then lots of different toppings like ube jam. They have like sweetened kidney beans, coconut strips, boiled taro, things like that get put on top of this evaporated milk crushed ice mixture. And it's usually served with a scoop of ube ice cream. So it's like the unofficial national dessert of the Philippines. And Homicide and Halo Halo is by Mia P. Manansala, who is of Filipino descent. And her characters, the main characters, are running a Filipino-based restaurant in a medium-sized Midwestern city. And so Leela Macapagal is the main character. She's been invited to be a judge for, let's look up the title of this, Miss Teen Shady Palms Beauty Pageant.
Oh.
So Shady Palms is the name of her town. And she apparently had won this contest back when she was a teenager and now has been invited to be a judge. And then there's a murder associated with the beauty pageant. And,
dun, dun, dun.
and we need that sound on here. And so she is, of course, trying to figure out what happened there. But it's a little darker. The author did say in her author's note that she was affected a little bit by the COVID pandemic. Life was a little darker, so she kind of dug into some of these more negative emotions that you might not always see in a cozy mystery. But overall, it is still cozy. So it was a fun read for a Christmas time, you know, family murder.
Now into 2023.
Ooh, we've arrived.
Time travel. The theme for January of 2023 was color in the title. So we typically, for the 3 years we've been doing this, have tried to make January a little broader than some other themes. So we just wanted people to pick a book with a color in the title. That was the only parameter. I read a book called Bluebird, Bluebird by Attica Locke. Obviously, blue is the color. And Attica Locke was a writer and producer on the Fox TV show Empire. I thought that would be interesting to read. And it's about a detective in this like Texas small town, and they have to solve a murder. I read this book in January, so I'm trying to remember. I remember like not loving it. The story was interesting. I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It's about a black detective in this like Texas small town of mostly white people. So there's a lot of racism. Even though this detective is in a position of power, like he still gets a lot of pushback from the residents of the town when he's like trying to solve this murder. So that's Bluebird, Bluebird. What did you read for color in the title?
So I read the book White Horse. So my color is white. There may be some debate on whether white is a color or an absence of color, but we're going to go with it's a color.
But I love a variation on a theme, so you can do absence of color too.
White Horse is written by Erica T. Worth, and it is a debut novel about an Indigenous woman who begins to be haunted by her mother after her cousin discovers this bracelet that belonged to her mother. So she gets this bracelet and she touches it. And then this ghost that looks like her mother shows up. And then there's also this like kind of monstrous entity that is associated with her visions of her mother's ghost as well. So there's something kind of negative happening. She ends up, because she's being haunted by this ghost and this also kind of monstrous entity, she ends up trying to figure out what's going on there and kind of delves deeper into her family's history, kind of the history of the American Indian movement in the United States and the way that the federal government was not supportive of Indian rights for a long time. But it's all kind of told in this really interesting kind of horror, thriller, paranormal lens. So dealing with some really deep issues, written in a exciting kind of thriller. I liked it. I thought it was an interesting look, kind of putting a personal story to some of these bigger historical movements.
Interesting how I said it was like a broad topic on purpose, and we both kind of read like mystery, thriller, horror novels.
Well, I mean, that's the good thing is you can read what sounds interesting to you as long as it had a color in the title.
Yeah.
So you could also read, I don't know, what's a color in the title book that's completely different than that? Now that like we're put on the spot, it's there's got to be some kind of like red, white, and royal blue, which is a romance.
Like a teen romance, yeah. That was just made into a movie. So it would also fit into our February theme, book to screen.
Look at those transitions. It's like we've been doing this for a while.
It's like we're librarians. So February, book to screen. I read The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. It was made into a movie I think in that same month, in February, called Knock at the Cabin. I don't know why they changed the name. Probably because there's too many movies with cabin in the title. But the movie was called Knock at the Cabin, and it was an M. Night Shyamalan movie. So that's why I wanted to read the book. So we're still kind of on the horror theme with my book. So Cabin at the End of the World is about a family who are on vacation in a cabin. How many times can I say cabin? So it's two dads and their daughter. And then these like four strangers show up at the cabin, and I mean, there's some buildup, but they basically tell them that they have to decide to sacrifice one of themselves. So they have to choose amongst themselves a sacrifice to prevent the apocalypse. So they don't, obviously at first, they're like, you're crazy people. We're not going to decide to kill one of our family members. So when they make that choice, then it turns out every time they decide to not prevent this end of the world apocalypse, that one of the four strangers who like show up to tell them this information then has to die instead. And then every time they don't decide, there is some big like world event that happens. So they turn on the TV and see, I think the first one is like a tsunami happens. So it's like, you didn't choose, so this is starting, the apocalypse is starting, the end of the world is starting. But then there's the question of, like, is this really live? Like, we're in this cabin, like, we don't have cell service, of course. So how do we know that this is really happening and that this isn't all planned? And the book is a lot more ambiguous than the movie. I have now seen the movie. The book is always better. So that's Cabin at the End of the World. I recommend the book, obviously, and seeing the movie. It has Dave Bautista and Ron Weasley. I can't think of what his name is. Rupert Grint. I got there. So it's fun to see, and Dave Bautista is from Guardians of the Galaxy. So it's fun to see these people from like these fantasy world movies in this like doomsday kind of movie. Even though the book is better, I still recommend you read and watch both.
So I noticed that on our sound pad that we have, one of the sounds is described as scary. Oh. And since we just talked about like two kind of horror movies back to back, let's see. Oh, it's sort of like a little Jason-y, or not Jason.
Freddy?
Oh,
Michael Myers.
Michael Myers, yeah, like that.
Halloween.
Like that little like sound, that little song that shows up when he's around. Yeah,
you're the only one with the headphones. So
yeah, I'm
the
only one that can hear that. So you all got to hear the sound and then hear me describe the sound to Natalie because she couldn't hear the sound. Well, I did not read a horror book for February. I did read a mystery, though. So I read the first book in Walter Mosley's Easy Rawlins series called Devil in a Blue Dress. And it takes place in the 1940s in L.A. Easy Rawlins is a World War II vet who has just been fired from his job, and he's like concerned about how he's going to continue paying the mortgage on his house because it was really important to him that because he was a war vet, he was able to purchase a house and be a homeowner. And now that's threatened. And so when a guy walks into a bar and is like, hey, I'll pay you to help me find this woman, it takes him on a dive into LA jazz clubs as he searches for Miss Daphne Monet, who is a blonde who frequents these jazz clubs and things. And it was made into a movie in 1995 starring Denzel Washington as Easy Rawlins. So one of the things that I had like an issue with in the book is that he's this out of work guy, and yet every woman in the novel like throws themselves at him like, oh, I have to get with Easy. But in the movie, he's Denzel Washington. So maybe I understand it a little more, because if Denzel Washington is unemployed, I think he's still the kind of guy that women might throw themselves at. So not my favorite book that I read, but, it's a amateur detective kind of series. So I'm not opposed to reading the second one. I haven't yet, but I might pick it up later.
I I don't know, a transition. So moving on to March. March was award winners, which I know Denzel Washington has won a bunch of awards. I don't know if for that movie, but
not for that one, but for others.
Yeah. So for award winners, I decided to listen to the audio of Finding Me by Viola Davis because it had just won the Grammy, like the audiobook, and it made Viola Davis an EGOT winner. So she's won all of the awards because she's great. And basically this book talks about how great she is. I interpret it that way. She does not say that. She talks about like kind of her life building up to her wanting to become an actor. The part that really stood out to me was when she talks about, I think, applying to Juilliard. She was already in a play, so she like really didn't have a lot of time. She had to catch a train to go to this audition to get into Juilliard, and then she had to be back at a certain time to get back to her play. So she gets there and she tells them, yeah, you know, I have like 3 hours or whatever before I have to catch my train again. And they're like, no, this is a multi-step process. You audition for this group of people and then you wait. And then you get called back to audition again for this other group of people and then you wait. So it's an all day thing. And she's like, I have 3 hours. So she gives her audition, her performance that she had prepared. And then they actually like fast track her because she's so great, and she like gets it done in 3 hours and gets back for her play, and then she gets in. It's like it's
when
kind
you
of
got
amazing.
it, you got it.
Yeah. But it also talks about her life as a child, and then when she meets her husband. It's really great, and I really recommend the audiobook because she's a great narrator on top of being a great actor.
I'm trying to tell if I can hear through the headphones this moaning sound that our pipes are making. So just in case we can't edit out the sound in post-production, or in case, I can't really tell if it's being picked up by the headphones or if I'm just hearing it from the room. But if you hear a slight moaning in the background, it's just the pipes.
It's just our building.
Or it's the ghost that haunts the library, one or the other. I read a young adult novel in verse sort of collection of poems situation called October Morning, but spelled Mourning, not like the sun is rising morning. And its subtitle is A Song for Matthew Shepard. And it's by Leslie Newman, who is probably most famous for the fact that she wrote the book Heather Has Two Mommies, which has gotten a lot of challenges and calls for banning throughout the years. But this book was written in response to the fact that she came to the University of Wyoming to be the keynote speaker for Gay Awareness Week. And the murder of Matthew Shepard had just happened. So she lands in this community and is faced with these students who are grieving, and she was really struck by the emotion she felt being a part of that community in that time. If you aren't familiar, Matthew Shepard was a gay 21-year-old college student who was lured from a Wyoming bar by two men, and they savagely beat him, tied him to a fence, and left him to die. The novel, or the kind of collection of poems, however you want to describe it, is creating these like fictitious monologues from both people's points of view as well as items. So like the fence he was tied to has a story to tell. There was evidence at the scene that a deer had come and like lain next to his body. And so she writes a poem from the point of view of the deer that comes to kind of be with this man in his last hours on earth. So very emotional, very poignant. It was an honor book for the Stonewall Book Award, which recognizes excellence in storytelling about gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender issues. It was an honor book in the children's and young adult category in 2013. A very beautifully written book and about a really tragic circumstance, and
Heavy.
Yeah. Sorry for that.
Yeah. Again, really hard to come up with a transition to our way lighter theme, I guess, of books about books for April. lighter theme, but I picked a kind of weird book for this one. Again, 100% honest, I don't totally remember everything that happens in the book, but I do remember the like shocking response I got from our group when I talked about this at our book discussion. So the book I read was called The Book Eaters by Sun Yi Dean, I think. Again, terrible at name pronunciation. But The Book Eaters is about a group of people who only eat books. They don't eat food. They get their sustenance from books. And when they eat a book, then they like know the story. So it's like children in this group are only allowed to eat like fairy tales, or especially like young women, because like they're not allowed to know things. So they eat fairy tales and nobody really knows about them. They just kind of like live off to themselves. But sometimes something happens and a child may be born with a different sort of setup. Like they talk about book eaters having book teeth. So they're like really sharp so they can actually eat through like hardcovers. But sometimes children aren't born with book teeth. They're born with like I don't remember how to describe it, but like a weird kind of tubed tongue. And they can't eat books. So they have to eat minds.
Because that's the only other option. It's books or brains.
Yes, it is in this world. They feed off of people, and like the people don't really die, but they don't have memories or all of their knowledge is gone. So the basis of this book is this woman has a child that is a mind eater, and usually in this group they kill the mind eaters right away, but she doesn't let that happen. She fights off the people who are trying to take her baby away, and now it's 5 years later and her son is 5 and she's actually going to hunt people to like bring them back to her house so her son can feed off of them. And then she drops them at homeless shelters and people just think they're drunk or, you know, have mental problems, because they do now, because her son has taken all their knowledge. There's a lot more happens, but that's the basis. It's this book eater mother is trying to sustain her son who is a mind eater.
I mean, that's dark in a whole other way.
Yeah.
We read some interesting books. Mine is much more in the cozy mystery kind of frame. So I read The Verifiers by Jane Peck, and it's a debut novel that may be the start of a series. So on the Goodreads website, they say like it's The Verifiers #1, but there's no #2 yet. So we'll see if there actually ever is a #2. But it's about Claudia Lynn, who is born into an Asian American family that wants kind of the traditional things, like they want her to marry a nice Chinese boy. They want her to become a doctor or a lawyer. And she is a lesbian who has no desire to be a doctor or a lawyer. But she is someone who is a really good researcher, and she has been recruited to work at this shady organization called Veracity, and they're an invitation-only private investigation company that specializes in dating apps. It's for like rich people who meet somebody on a dating app and want to make sure the person's legit before they actually meet them in real life. So she does this kind of investigative work for her job, but one of their clients goes missing, which starts this story, and she becomes kind of an amateur detective as she tries to figure out why this client has gone missing, and also in the process discovers some kind of seediness to the way the company is run, to the way that technology can be used to infiltrate people's lives. There's also then the continuation of her family's relationship story. So it gets into one of those family relationship kinds of stories mixed with a little bit of a cozy mystery amateur detective story that makes you think about love and technology and how it's all getting interwoven in the 21st century. Not as dark. But that's 5 books.
Yeah, so we're halfway through.
So we may stop here.
Yeah. Do we want to like officially end, like have a great and
I mean, we
Start
can.
over.
Okay, so if we're gonna officially end, let's.
We need our transition.
Gotta play some transition music for you guys. All right. So we're not done, but we're sort of done.
Yeah. We're done with this half.
There you go.
And we're going to end on a cliffhanger so you continue with our sequel to this episode.
Are the next 10 books that Natalie and Sarah will talk about? You don't know. You have to find out. You have to tune in.
You have to.
Those crazy girls, they might read anything. Yeah. We just can't wait to find out.
More tubular tongues. More mysteries, more murder.
Yes, I definitely have more murder coming up.
Yes.
So that's something to look forward to.
Yes.
But I guess in the meantime,
have a great.
Stop. I played the fake theme song, not the real theme song. I have to.
It's the fake theme song.
So there's like this. It's like, I don't know. It comes with the thing.
Oh.
So I have to go to my sounds and play our theme, not their theme. Okay. Now we're going to start.
Okay.